Good evening, and welcome to Black Mental Health is Black Health. I am your host, Bronwyn Lucas, and the Black Couch Therapist, and I'm here tonight with it's Poetry Month. Yes, so we have a poet, and in a minute, I will tell you why I believe poetry is important for your mental health. As you know, I say everything we do can impact our mental health, and I try to find positive ways to help you impact yours. If you've never been here before, you know what we do. We start off with some deep breaths. Why? Clears your mind from whatever may have happened today, good, bad, or indifferent, and it's something you can practice anytime, anywhere. So, I'm going to count into four very slowly and say, breathe in. As I count to four, then I'll say, breathe out. And we're going to do three slow, deep breaths, filling your brain and your body with oxygen. It will feel good. Let's get started. Breathe in, two, three, four, out, two, three, four, in, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. In, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. Just those three cleansing breaths. Jeremy, how was that deep breathing for you?
It was great. I'm feeling relaxed and pumped and ready to go.
Awesome. Well, take a moment to tell us who you are and tell us something cool about yourself. That's how I like to start each show with my guest.
All right, for sure. Hi, everyone. I am Jeremy. I am a teacher and a poet and an activist. I am residing in Houston, and something cool about me is I am Trinidadian. My parents are from Trinidad. For those who may not know, that's an island in the Caribbean.
Did you grow up there or you grew up here?
When I was a little kid, I grew up there. But since then, I've just been back and forth for trips. Grew up in New
Cool.
Jersey mostly.
That is cool. What do you teach?
I teach special education, English, and reading to high school students.
Awesome. That was how I started my professional life in special ed. So kudos. And that's what I taught. Was the reading the whole language arts in. You can have the math numbers and I are not friends. So yes. That is cool. Didn't know we had that in common. Awesome. Well, it is National Poetry Month, so I've invited a poet to share some poems and just to talk about poetry. But what in the world does poetry have to do with your mental health? Well, there are a couple of ways to look at it. When you think about writing and poetry, we're using the creative side of our brain, that right brain, that creative energy that we don't always, if you're not right brain, you're not tapping into. If you're the analytical person, it's really good. Tap into that other side of you. Poetry is a way of using words to express what you're feeling. Poetry can, as Jeremy is an activist, poetry can tap into that activism. It can tap into your just love of somebody. Send them a nice love poem. It can tap into getting out those emotions you have. If you are dealing with deep emotions, even of anxiety and depression, writing about it and writing about it in a creative form, in a poetic form, can be beneficial. So, ah, poetry is amazing. So, Jeremy, how did you even start writing poetry?
Poetry is amazing. I agree. I started writing because I was really into hip hop, really into old school hip hop, and really into Def Poetry Jam, which, for anybody who may not know, is a program that used to come on HBO that had poets doing spoken word. And it was really, really cool. It was a lot of fun. to witness and to see people put words together in really creative ways. It would invite on some rappers sometimes, like Mos Def and Kanye before he became Ye. Um, and so that really got me invested. And then I started performing myself. And I went to a competition, a youth competition called Brave New Voices, and that's really where I got my start as a going into being a professional with poetry.
Well, why don't you share something with us? We're here to hear poetry tonight, and I'll ask some questions in between, and we'll talk about what you wrote. So, share something with us.
For sure. So one poem that I definitely wanted to share is a poem that I made, several years ago. But I was looking through my documents, and this one popped up, and it struck a chord with me. So I'll share this now. It is an ode to the tow truck.
Okay. Oh, you froze. If you can
Am I
hear
back?
me, now you're back.
Okay. So that means that it looks like I can't pull up my poem and also be on the stream at the same time. So yeah, if you give me a couple of minutes, I'll pull it up on my computer that I have over here, and then I'll read it, or I'll be able to read it on there while I'm filming myself on my phone. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that was happening.
That's okay. We go with the flow. Life happens. So while you're pulling that up, um, I'll just kind of talk a little bit about, when we think about poetry, as I said, it is a way of being just that self-expression that is so important. If you are, if you're listening and you can, if you're on Facebook now, have you ever, do you read any poetry? Is poetry fun to you? Do you write any poetry? Drop us a line in the comments and we'll see them. Um, we think about what is poetry. Uh, People a lot of times think of poetry as rhyming. It has to rhyme, it has to have a certain meter. That is one type of poetry. And I like to say, open your mind, think of different ways that something poetry might be. Not all poetry rhymes. Some poetry might have just a refrain in it after, might have a line. Poetry does have a meter, um, it does have a feel to it. It does have a cadence, and it's like its own rhythm when you're writing poetry and when you're listening to poetry. So there's narrative poetry, which is like telling a story, lyrical poetry, which is the poetry that has that beat, that syncopated. You can almost feel it. Your dance to it. It's got a mood to it. Then there's just that poetry that tells a story. Some people write their poetry out. Some can just create it at the drop of a hat. It's all about that creative juice that can flow. Uh, Oh, we're letting Jeremy still get his things going on. So, let me see. I was thinking if I wanted to share something I've written. I hadn't even considered that. I can say that in the past I have written some poetry, and maybe for different things. I don't even know if I know how to find any of my old myself, what I used to write. Let me see. Just being able to share some different things. But I have several poets I really, really love. So I will maybe share something from a poet I love. If Jeremy, about how much more time do you need? You need a few more minutes? I'll share a poem.
Yeah, I could use another minute.
Okay, let me do this. So, back in the day when I was in college 100 years ago, I had a group of friends. A group. We call it, I know it sounds soulful, but we were the Ebony Silhouettes. And we performed in at KU, University of Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas. And Langston Hughes grew up in Lawrence. And they've dedicated this area, part of a library, to him, and we were able to perform and do some poems there. And I've always liked his work. And when I have kids reading poetry, learning poetry, his is one I do. So while he's setting up, I'm going to share a poem. And it's funny how um, things change, yet they stay the same. And that's something that poems can do. Let us give a glimpse into the history because a poem reflects the time it was written. So this one is called I Too by Langston Hughes. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. No one will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am America. And when I think about that poem, as I read it, I thought about how even now, as African Americans, we don't fully have our place at the table. Well, we had a better place, and you look at with voting rights being repealed and so many things happen. Man, we got to continue to work to claim our space at the table. Um, so that was one that I just love. You about ready, Jeremy?
I am, yes.
Okay, we're ready for you.
Okay, so this is a poem that I wrote after being towed. It's called Ode to the Tow Truck. The first car I ever owned got totaled in a rush hour accident. At least 1,000 passing eyes let me know that the trouble this morning was my fault. And we have all seen this scene. But no one tells you how easy it gets to live in those lonely moments forever. So this poem is not just for the rookie drivers like me. With trembling teenage hands, leaden feet, and mommy's voice shaking soprano in the passenger seat, not just for our high school priorities. How we check the mirror for zits, skip a song on the playlist, yet miss a passing cyclist. Watch out for our sudden swerves, newfound nerves, really wide turns, and jerky stops. Okay, start again. Stop. Start not just for when we caught side eyes and lies from our driving instructors. You're doing great with your clumsy virgin's touch. Soon enough, you'll purr the engine, coax out a slow roll. You'll make driving sexy someday, but today you are a lover all the same. See, you can hug the corner even if it's a sidearm hug. Even if the corner is low key offended and the curb takes revenge, pushes you into a tailspin that ends with Herbie suspended, bumper hooked to a strap and a hitch, I promise this is not just for you, but for all the skid marks and screeches. The seasoned veteran coping with the feel of a new wheel. The service light ignored just a day too long. The consummate professional with drive larger than gas tank for the nights the lanes get as narrow as your sight, we have all had cause to push our tires past the borderlines, those unruly crayons coloring across the margins. For every time your ambition outpaces your ability, don't worry, there is company in the ditch.
That resounded with me on so many levels, especially as a mom teaching a son to drive. It
Yes.
resounded. So, what actually happened?
Yeah, what actually happened was I wrote this poem after I got towed for the second time. The first time I crashed my car, I totaled it and it had to get towed out of the scene, right? But the second time I had just parked in a spot that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to park in because I was relatively new to Houston. And they are unforgiving when it comes to that.
My gosh, goodness.
Yeah. And at first I got really, really annoyed, really mad because I was like, I paid $400 to have like, several hours of my life taken away. What was the point of any of this, right? And as you mentioned in the beginning of the program, poetry is really so useful for helping you to express your emotions. And it doesn't take being an amazing poet or anything like that. You just, kind of write out where you are. But I do find that having done this for a long time, after practicing on it for a while, something that you end up being able to do is turn an emotion that you have that's a negative one into a positive one. And so that's kind of how I was able to write this ode, is to think about, well, a tow truck was a bad sight for me at that time, but
Hmm.
there are so many times when it should be a good sight, when it should be helping you out of a problem that you've gotten yourself in, and you should be happy to see a tow truck. So I decided to write those two worlds into each other.
I like that because it is a way to oh, hold on, something. It is a way to express. It gets out some of that emotions too. It's like, like you say, there is a negative side. Oh, I had this happen, and now I see a control truck, and the money it's going to cost, and my car is going, and all of that. And then it's like, but there are times when that tow truck is your friend. So yeah, I think that that's cool. I like that. I like that, and it is when I talk about the healing part of poetry. To write it out can be healing. I just need to get this out. So
Yes,
that's
definitely.
cool. I like that. Who are some of your poets that you like, old and new?
Thank you for the kind words. An old poet that I really admire, of course, Langston Hughes. The poem that you shared, I feel like that also kind of goes with the theme, of being able to say this country has done so much harm to me, and yet I am part of it. I am going to turn this into a positive thing. Um, and Many of the newer poets that I embrace and that I reflect my style on operate the same way. Um, One poet that really was instrumental in me developing my style is Sarah Kay, and she has so many examples of poems that are about, like, really painful and really hard to understand things, but then she'll also have poems that are about really simple things that really touch your soul and make you reflect on how wonderful it is to be alive sometimes, right? So
Mm.
yeah, those are a few people that I look up to. How about you?
I was thinking of some of the older poets I like, just to share. So people may not know, like Nikki Giovanni. I just love her work. Sonia Sanchez, definitely Langston Hughes. And these were, like I said, 100 years ago when I was in college. We did a lot of, their poems. We performed them all over, and it was fun. And those were three that I just, I still love reading their works. It's just poetry for me too is I'm a very visual person. So when I read a poem, I a lot of times see it. So the one I did by Langston Hughes, when you did yours, I can remember one time being told, it took me back. And poetry can incite feelings, good or bad. So I can remember being told in Houston, because now the only part of my car that was in a towaway zone was the front bumper.
That's the worst.
And it was like 2 inches over, and my car was towed. No, yeah. It brought me back to that whole day. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. That was not the day I was happy to see a tow truck. And so for me, I when you did that, and that's how poetry can be, just hit all of the senses. And when you did that, man, I was taken right back to that day of this is not fun. But yeah, it's cool. I love how it's just so real. You want to share something else with us? I know you got some more over there.
I do. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a teacher. I'm a special education teacher. Um, and Today, while I was teaching, I did not exactly have a great day. Today was testing, so we took
Mm,
the STAR test for algebra.
not fun at all.
Yeah, it sucks. um, and then coming out of that, it felt like because we had um, you know 5 periods of testing, and then 2 periods of regular classes. And
Mhm.
it seems like some of my kids were not ready to be back in regular class. Like, it takes a lot out of you.
Yes.
And coming out of school, um, I understand that, but in the moment when you're teaching, it's just a frustrating thing. um, so I'm gonna share my poem about my first day kind of experiencing that frustration and needing to sit with it, and kind of develop a proper response to it. So this is called Paint the Sun.
Mm.
For my 13th birthday, I gave myself two presents: a paint set and a planet, spinning and glazing my own world. I was the clay and the potter's wheel with a kiln at my core, quick hardening, quick coloring, and quick to bite the brush wielding hand of the one who force feeds. Because at age 13, if you told me that my world was your canvas, I would swallow your paintbrush. And 9 years later, I hadn't forgotten the taste. So once I started teaching, at the wildest middle school in the district, I made sure to take my own world off of the whiteboard. To stand in front of Malik and Javion and Maya with empty hands gave them their own futures to hold. I declared each period a bottomless well of finger paint. Since each fingerprint, everyone belonged to a well intentioned hand, I was sure, and if it didn't before, it just needed another assignment. You see, each assignment is a new room to walk through and hang pictures, and each class is a mother's fridge waiting for fingerprint canvas to become the third wheel between metal door and magnet, and I could not teach. But who needs technique when you've got charisma, right? Who needs a paintbrush when you've got faith? Who says that this world won't beautify itself without a green thumb to guide it? Well, first period does. Good morning, class, I say, and they rearrange their desks, turn their backs to the board to continue the long-standing relationship they had built with failure, kissing it open mouth all 45 minutes of class. Fridge is bare of everything but trouble magnets, and there is no third wheel here, no potters, no wheel at all. They do not know progression like they know repetition. Second period is the same as first, and I am worried that we are destined to spin our wheels away, staying stationary, never advancing past this year, 100 worlds, all with no revolution. Third period does not trust me. I let them paint a world they grew to hate. The girl in the back of the class with a permanent scowl throws her assignment off her desk. I put it back in front of her instead of kicking her out, and she looks at me like empathy is the new elephant in the room, says, "Why are you always trying to solve problems, sir?" Fourth period does not trust themselves. They tell me real teachers paint canvases, real teachers paint words on whiteboards. Give us your voice so we can give it back to you. They dip their timid fingers in 5 different colors of paint and let it dry there. And before I know it, it's the last period of the day. And not knowing where I am gone wrong, I am sorely tempted to force feed, to for once pick up a brush and paint myself a period of perfect students. I am this close to becoming the potter's wheel out spinning every seventh grader in Crystal McCall Middle School when the bell rings. Have a great day. And I get a visit from the teacher in the class down the hall. She has spent years growing a thumb green enough to paint 1,000 worlds beautiful, while I am wearing my most photosynthetic smile for when she asks me how it went today. But instead, she smiles when she looks at my blank whiteboard. She says, "I hope you weren't expecting this to be any easier. It will always start dark when you are trying to paint the sun."
Mm. Mm. And that last line just sums it up. It will always start dark when you want to paint the when you want to paint the sun or when you start to paint the sun. That wow. That again, you are just hitting that nerve with me as a teacher. As I said, I started out in education as a teacher, special ed, and in a sense, once you're an adult, hopefully we all have a teacher aspect to us. If you're a parent, you're teaching your children, but even as an adult, there are people around you. You are always teaching, and even just in that, it can be that difficult. But I love that it encapsulates what teaching so well. I love your play of words, your use of words, just the way, and it's a good way to say how poetry can make you feel and your feelings can be communicated to others. And because I'm also an educator, I can definitely, take in those feelings. But man, it's love it, love it, love it, love it.
Thank you
Uh,
so much. Appreciate it.
it strikes a chord, strikes a nerve, but a good one, a very good one, and that's what poetry does, and it can be healing. When I think about the poem you wrote, that could be a poem that's shared with new teachers. Um, as that can be a teaching tool in and of itself because you're going through what you felt, what you experienced. So was that truly your experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. That actually happened.
And I like the way you're able to take your experiences and put them on paper. And the reason I say that could be something um, for new teachers, it's like, okay, this is where you're going to go through, and it's fresh, it's exciting, and I love the way you presented it. It's like, yeah, this was going to happen. And it's just plain and simple. And then when they go through it, can come back and say, oh man, he was right. So poetry is also a way to teach. We can, when we think about it, music lyrics are just poetry.
Hmm.
And we can remember lyrics because of the music and the cadence and the beat. We can remember words to songs so quickly. So when you wanted to teach, I started out in elementary. Man, I put everything to music. you know
Oh yeah.
how did kids learn their multiplication facts? And back in the day there was this ABC Schoolhouse Rock, and people in my generation, you learn conjunction junction, what's your
What's your
function,
function?
and we learned it all. We knew
Yeah.
conjunctions and function. We could do the preamble to the Constitution because it was in there. But that's really poetry does the same thing. It gives it that music is poetry. So awesome, awesome, awesome. We have about 3 minutes left. I was
Oh, okay.
debating. Yeah, I told you 30 minutes goes so quick. I was trying to decide. I had one I was going to share, but do you have one you want to share?
Oh
I
no,
was
I'd love
going
to
to
hear
do.
from you, please.
Well, it's not mine, but I told you Nikki Giovanni was somebody, and as I've
Hmm.
been working on some things for Mother's Day with someone, and there's this poem she wrote called Mothers. And the other thing about poetry, some poetry can really be timeless, like what you wrote. I was a beginning teacher decades ago. I remember those feelings. So, some things strike that timeless chord. This is a poem by Nikki Giovanni called Mothers. The last time I was home to see my mother, we kissed, exchanged pleasantries and unpleasantries, and pulled a warm, comforting silence around us and read separate books. I remember the first time I consciously saw her. We were living in a 3-room apartment on Burns Avenue. Mommy always sat in the dark. I don't know how I knew that, but she did. That night, I stumbled into the kitchen. Maybe because I've always been a night person, or perhaps I'd wet the bed. She was sitting on a chair. The room was bathed in moonlight, diffused through those thousands of panes landlords who rented to people with children were prone to put in windows. She may have been smoking, or maybe not. Her hair was 3/4 her height, which made me a strong believer in the Samson myth, and very black. I'm sure I just hung there by the door. I remember thinking, what a beautiful lady. She was very deliberately waiting, perhaps for my father to come home from his night job, or maybe for a dream that had promised to come by. Come here, she said, I'll teach you a poem. I see the moon and the moon sees me. God bless the moon and God bless me. I taught it to my son, who recited it for her, just to say, we must learn to bear the pleasures as we have borne the pains. Thank you. And that's one of the poems I say it's kind of just in the memory of your mother,
Mm-hmm.
and we can all have those memories, and they can be positive or negative. And it's some poems are just simple. It's just how you feel. And I think that one too speaks. It's an older poem, but poetry can be timeless. So I wanted to share that one. Well, thank you. We always end the show with a call to action based on whatever. We talked about tonight. And my call to action tonight is express yourself.
Yes.
And it's an old song. Go check it out because lyrics are poetry. But express yourself, put it in writing, and it can be just for you. Write your good and your bad feelings, put them on paper. Give it its own rhyme, its own rhythm, just like the poems you heard tonight. They are from someone's heartbeat. Let your heartbeat go on paper. And I always win with the final call to action is vote, vote, vote. Be an educated voter. We are in some places in Texas, we're in runoff elections, we just have a lot going on. Know what's going on in your community because your vote can make a difference. So much is happening and laws are being repealed. We need to be in the ballot booth. So vote, vote, vote. Jeremy, thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope the rest of you viewers enjoyed tonight and got something out. Put your words on paper. I am Bronwyn Lucas, the Black Couch Therapist, here to help you become a better you. See you next week.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome.